Welcome to the Java Cafe, Java fam. Good morning. Welcome to the Java Cafe, Java fam.
Good morning, everybody. Good morning. Good morning. Today is Wednesday, September 14th, 2020. I almost said 23. 2022. Welcome to the Java Cafe. We have some guests in the room, and it's actually a continuation of a conversation we had, I believe, in April and May, also in June when we did Java with Jimmy on the waterfront at the ICA. And we're bringing these group of folks back from the Boston Waterfront Coalition, also from the trustees, and also from one of the neighborhood associations. And I'm going to, because I don't have all the notes in front of me, but I'm getting ready to bring in our guests, and they're going to introduce themselves. They're doing some great work in the community around inclusion, equity, and as we've talked about on Boston Waterfront, it is a place that promotes self-care. It promotes healthiness, even in sort of the medical area, just fresh air and things like that. You can go for walks. Ian has posted about it. Anthony's posted about it. I've posted about it. We're going to hear more about it because there is a summit this weekend that we're going to talk about a little further, and also a day of service for you to meet some of the folks and also volunteer. And so without further ado, let's bring in our guest. It looks like Gabriella was dancing to the beat there, maybe, I don't know. But Gabriella, good morning. We'll talk about her later and blowing up Twitter. Latifa, good morning to you. Good to see you in the room. And also, no stranger to the Java Cafe, a friend and brother, Anthony Davis Jr. is here with us as well. So good morning to all of you. Thank you for being here. It's been a while since I've had a few guests, and so I'm going to ask Gabriella to introduce herself first, and then we'll go to Latifa and then to Anthony. But introduce yourself, tell us a little bit about yourself, and then we'll go back into the org and the work you're representing.
Okay. Good morning. I was jamming to the music. It was really good. Buenos dias. My name is Gabriela Ramirez. I'm the community outreach coordinator for the trustees. I'm born and raised in East Boston, but my parents immigrated here from El Salvador. I'm a student at Boston University studying political science and public policy, and I'm very interested in urban planning and community outreach. So I feel like that's who I am.
And I'll just say that I hope you do. People call you Gabby? Can I call you Gabby or Gabrielle? Okay. So Gabby put a tweet up yesterday about the appearance, and all of a sudden, our District 1 city councilor, and I don't know if she's watching on Twitter, but shout out to her, retweeted and talked about how proud of you she is. And so we just want to name that. You're making already a stamp in your work in the community. So that's definitely awesome. Latifa, it is a pleasure to meet you.
Again. Of course. Now,
what's up, Latifa? Introduce us. Latifa and I go back as early, I want to say about 2008, 2009, the Menino days.
Yes, 27 long years of them, and a lot of work as part of that. And it was a good precursor to all the work we're doing right now in East Boston, of course. So, you know, I've been working with city government for a long time. I think I did at least 12 years in that position. I worked with both the city of Jackson, Mississippi, which is a hot button name right now, as well as with the city of Boston. And so I've always been kind of involved in, I used to tell people, I pick up the phone and every phone call and every email is a problem. So I was really acclimated to solution building and problems, and I have a background in both electrical engineering and marine and environmental science. So when I first saw this job resilience I was like, oh, they pay you for that, right? And that was like at the New England Aquarium. And that kind of led me into some of the work that I'm doing right now with the Neighborhood of Affordable Housing as the Director of Community Engagement and Resilience there. And so we're really excited to be part of this Waterfront Coalition.
Absolutely. And Anthony, and I'm going to do my best to say Anthony. Friends and family call him AJ, but we want to, this is a powerful young man in the city, in the state, across the country, doing some great things. And the fact that when he and Alex reached out about this great work that the coalition is doing, it was no choice for me to get involved. And so, Anthony, I thank you for this opportunity. Reintroduce yourself for those that may be watching for the first time and tell us a little bit about yourself, and then maybe set a little bit of context for folks that don't know about the coalition.
Yeah. So good morning, everyone. Good morning, James. Good morning, Gabriella. Good morning, Latifa. Thank you all again for being here, and James for hosting us. My name's Anthony Davis Jr. I am originally from the DC area, but been in Boston, a transplant now for over 4 years, and loving my time in Boston. And my role with the Coalition for a Resilient and Inclusive Waterfront is actually as a programming advisor. So I help us build out a number of programs that we've hosted this year. Including our Waterfront Wellness Week, which James, you were alluding to earlier, and played a pivotal role in us having the big event at ICA on the waterfront. And thank you again for hosting that. And really what the coalition is, it is a coalition or an alliance of over 50 organizations here in the Boston area, and really expanding out into the greater New England area, who come together to have a conversation around the future of Boston's waterfront. I was actually out at the Road to Wellness 5K this weekend as a part of Black Joy Weekend, Joy Day, and shout out to Thaddeus Miles for organizing. And we had a table the Road to Wellness. And it's funny that one of the folks who stopped by our table were just like, when we talk about the waterfront, are you just talking about the Boston Harbor downtown? And really, that is why this coalition exists, is because when we talk about the waterfront, there's over 42 miles, and someone will give the exact number of miles.
I've heard 47, I've heard 40, 41. Listen, let's just say over 40. That's a lot of miles.
Over 40 is a good way to put it. Miles of waterfront.
I identify myself by age.
So there's over 40 miles of waterfront in the city of Boston that stretch into Dorchester, to Mattapan, to Hyde Park. And so the coalition's goal is to really bring together organizations who has been kind of traditionally focused on the waterfront, together with community groups like NOAA, like the Boys and Girls Club, to have a conversation around our waterfront and really think about how do we get folks who have traditionally felt like the waterfront only means the downtown Boston Harbor to feel like it's inclusive and welcoming to them as well.
Anthony, to that point, and Gabriella, I sort of joked about, I haven't been out to District 1 a lot, and we have to name the fact that East, it's not just the seaport, it's not just downtown. Is it downtown? I'm laughing at your.
I knew I was going to throw you off with that. Sorry about that.
Here I am trying to, Latifa and Gabriella, I'll figure out a way to get you. I cannot with you. I cannot. I'll figure out. I'll bring some.
I'm hating right now.
I'll bring some cups on Friday. But Gabriella, being out in Eastie, it's often, and as Latifa and I used to work with Mayor Menino, it's often said that Eastie is the forgotten child, because over the bridge and over the water and like that. And so we also have to name that there are wonderful spaces out in East Boston as well. And then Anthony named all the way down to Dorchester. And so at this pivotal time where the waterfront and its resources are going through sort of this period of change, and we're talking about equity and diversity, what does that look like? Why is it important? And what does it look like to you?
Yeah. Very important conversation. And it's definitely conversations we're having at the trustees as we're developing Pierce Park 3, which is an additional site to the existing Pierce Park, which has the most beautiful views in Eastie, if not in the city. And part of the conversation that we're having is we're meeting the community where they are. So we're going to the farmers market, we're going out to the parks, we're going on the greenway, and we're talking to them about what it means to be at Pierce Park. And my favorite thing is when I tell them, what do you envision when you think of the waterfront? And a lot of the community, Spanish speaking folks, are like, what's the waterfront? And so we start talking about it, and then they tell me, oh, I have these beautiful memories of going down to the park and taking pictures when my family visits, taking my wedding pictures there. And I'm like, that's the waterfront. You have beautiful memories in the waterfront, but we haven't connected those just yet. And some of the work that we're doing right now is making sure that we're hearing those stories, we're having those conversations, so that Pierce Park 3 can be another space where the community can continue to make those beautiful memories with their friends and families, while also being a resilient structure in our community as we see flooding in Eastie taking a big issue.
So again, I told you all in the beginning, you may say something that causes me to ask you to go a little bit deeper. At the event at the ICA, Chief White Hammond talked about not only the use and beautification, but the waterfront also has an opportunity to also address issues of flooding. You design it in a manner that it can absorb the flooding, and then when that subsides, and it's cleared, you can go back to using it. And so I just wanted to raise that as well, because it's about the enjoyment, but building it in a way that we can enjoy it for the future to come. Latifah, let me ask you, what does an accessible future on the waterfront look like to you? We talk about diversity and inclusion and equity, but access has come up in this conversation a lot, because though we have 40 miles, it's on the coast. A lot of BIPOC, Black and brown folks can't get to the waterfront as easy. Now, East Boston, I will say there's a little bit of an advantage, because in some cases you can just kind of like walk a few minutes and you're right there at Pierce Park and different parts of East Boston. But to you, Latifah, based on the work you're doing and be involved in this, what does an accessible future to the waterfront look like to you?
Well, we're always building in the neighborhood of affordable housing, NOAA, and part of that has to do with, we've been an existing organization for about 35 years in East Boston, and in that time, we helped to create one of the first programs to access like kayaking. So we have a rich kayaking program at Constitution Beach that we do every summer. This year, I think we had over 900 people come out and access the water through that venue, thanks to a grant through the Better Beaches grant. And this is the kind of thing that I think is just baseline. One of the conversations that I had with someone who lived in Chelsea, which is right next door, there's really no serious borders there, said there's no access points for kayaks. So if you can imagine, the work that we're doing in East Boston is just fundamental, because if you can't touch the water, if there aren't means of easy access, if you're scared because you can't swim in the water, you'll just be a passerby person, and you're not going to be a responsible steward, and you're not going to be able to access that, not only for beautification and have a sense of ownership in the community, also for commerce. We have a whole aquaculture that could come out of East Boston, as we talk about even reframing zoning in East Boston. So for me, the access point is, can you live there? Can you live safely by having homes that are above sea level rise and storm surge? And can you access these places economically? Can you access them regularly? And can you grow up with a culture of families that can access them no matter what your point is on the social economic ladder? And that's what this is about.
Latifah, let me ask you a little bit, one, because I know you and I know that you'll drive this home. Why should Black and brown folks be involved and take advantage of this opportunity? There's a lot of conversation, the coalition, the trustees. There is an open invitation. I'm at the New England Aquarium tonight talking about, reshaping the coastline. Why should Black and brown folks hop, for lack of better words, hop in and add their voice to this sort of reconstruction of the waterfront?
I mean, it's our historic right? I mean, you look at the history in this community of the Wampanoag, and they use that coastline for, survival, fishing. We did a program at the aquarium when I was there called Sharks and Slave Ships. And it was telling our healing story through ships and sharks, and dispelling the myth, or adding value to the scientific knowledge of, do sharks really follow slave ships off the coast all the way to America like this rumor has been? So you can't even heal properly without having a relationship with that ocean. All right. Everyone knows we're a huge part of the water, and the water is a huge part of us. So with that being cut off, it kind of cuts off a vital part of our own heritage and our history.
So went far beyond what I was even thinking. Thank you for the historical context. Anthony, I want to come to you and also say, you mentioned that a number of events, and I'm just curious, do you know the exact number? But there has been an intentionality of the trustees and the coalition and whatnot to really get messaging out, and sort of a drumbeat of bringing attention to the waterfront. Why?
Yeah. Well, it's just as Latifah said, I think one of the things that is very important, and what the coalition has been focused on this year, is really making that tie between the public health of the city and our waterfronts. And what that really means is that the coalition actually conducted a survey last year, that one of the things that we found in the survey was that 70% of Boston voters, 70% of Boston residents from that survey felt as though Boston could be doing a better job of using its public spaces along the waterfront to benefit the public health of the city. And so, kind of coming out of that finding, which is a pretty alarming stat, 70% of residents feel as though the city's not doing enough along the waterfront. The coalition really wanted to convene programming this year to really have a conversation around how do we improve, how do we use these public spaces along the waterfront to improve public health and benefit public health as well. And then one thing that Latifah touched on is just the restorative benefits of being along the waterfront, the healing benefits of being along the waterfront. And we kind of have touched on wellness in a number of different ways. I touched on this earlier, but we hosted Waterfront Wellness Week earlier this year, where we had wellness, and we spoke about wellness along the waterfront, hosted programming along the waterfront geared toward wellness, and talked about wellness from physical wellness to mental wellness to spiritual wellness to communal wellness. And so when we really think about the waterfront, there's so many public health benefits, but also just restorative benefits to being along the waterfront. And so the coalition really exists to, bring together these organizations who have been having this conversation, have been doing this work for years, along with groups that have traditionally been left out of this conversation and been left out of being able to take advantage of the public health benefits that exist along the waterfront.
I'm going to come to Gabriella in just a minute. And Gabriella, I will ask you to sort of talk to, why it's important to you a little bit too. But Anthony, there have been a lot of events, along the waterfront and downtown. And so this weekend, the coalition and the partners, as a part of the Fierce Urgency of Now Fest, have brought the event to Roxbury at RCC. So there is a whole waterfront summit this weekend. There's a day of service. Anthony, give us a little intro there, and then Gabrielle, I'm going to come back to you.
Yeah. So as you touched on, we are hosting our summit this Friday, September 16th at Roxbury Community College. We're calling it the Waterfront Summit, and really what we're gearing to do is bring together community leaders, advocates, activists, elected officials, again, to have a conversation around the future of our waterfront, but more specifically, talk about how we can use our waterfront both to benefit our public health in the city, and also how do we make it more inclusive? How do we make it more resilient and welcoming to the public? And so as you said, the summit has been adopted as a part of the City Awake's Fierce Urgency of Now Festival. And just to give a preview of a few speakers that we'll have during the day, we will have our very own Latifah here moderating our resiliency panel. James will be moderating our inclusive panel on Friday. We'll have Reverend Willie Broderick on one of our panels, Dr. John Santiago, Rep John Santiago, Representative China Tyler will also be joining us on Friday. And then we actually just confirmed Oliver Sellers Garcia, who is the city's brand new Green New Deal director, who will be bringing us our closing remarks on Friday. So we really put together a great program for Friday. There'll be plenty of free food, music, and then also
$3.99.
We love to plug the freeness. And then also we are kicking off the morning at 8:30 a.m. with the wellness activity with Small Steps Clinic, where they'll be doing some holistic wellness activities as well as acupuncture. So we actually got to preview that this weekend at the Road to Wellness 5K, and that'll be a great kind of way to kick off the day and really center people as they go into the summit. And then, as you mentioned on Saturday, I'll briefly touch on this because I know Gabriella and the trustees are hosting an event on Saturday. But this Saturday, we're also hosting a Love Your Waterfront Day of Service in tandem with the City of Boston's Love Your Block initiative, which is taking place this Saturday and next Saturday. We're hosting Love Your Waterfront this Saturday, and we'll be having a number of service events happening along the waterfront where folks can come out to volunteer and either clean up along the waterfront or help with the beautification program along the waterfront as well.
So that's this Friday. It's free. There will be food, speakers, and a panel. And then Gabriella, on Saturday is the day of service. And so before we go to that, can you just give us a little bit about why? And you talked a little about it earlier, but I just wanted to offer you the same opportunity I gave Anthony and Latifah as well, as to why Black and brown people really need to be invested in this and lend their voice. And then you can talk about the day of service and why that's important.
Yeah, I would say personally for me, I grew up in an apartment for 15 years that did not have like a little outdoor patio spot. So I would go whenever my parents had free time in the afternoon, which is rarely because they were working 2 jobs, to the park to enjoy some of the green space that there was in East Boston. And until last year, I'm 21, I got an apartment that has a small patio space, but that's not the reality of our community.
Right.
A lot of people that we're talking to have said, the one thing that I wish I could have is just a small space where I can plant something, or I can just go out and sit and have a cup of coffee before I go to work, or spend some time outdoors. And in those conversations that we're having with the community, they're saying that's what I want. And so that's why it's important that, unfortunately, housing here doesn't have it, but we are creating more spaces in the community that will give you that space. And we're looking to have programming there where you will be able to enjoy what you wish you could enjoy in your outdoor patio space.
Yeah.
So one, personally in our community, it's very important that we have those spaces. And from the conversations that we're having, we're hearing that they want that space, and for it to be inclusive, it just means like we want to feel welcome. We want to be there and have programming that is part of our culture. So we do, family festivals where we celebrate the beautiful and diverse culture that East Boston has. We do outdoor performances with the Veronica Robles Cultural Center. We do free sailing with Pierce Park Sailing Center. We work with the Neighborhood Affordable Housing to do small stuff with our youth program.
Shout out to Noah.
Shout out to Noah, because that's where I started. We work with the East Boston Neighborhood Health Center to also do some waterfront wellness activities. So we're really focusing on what we're hearing from the community so that we can have programming in the park when it's open, but also right now as we're starting to have those conversations. It's very important so that when the park is open, we've already had so many conversations that we're saying, okay, what are we doing now? Like, we have a bucket of ideas. Let's bring it together with the community and with our community partners to host them.
I thank you for that. It really stands out. And that's a lot of sentiment that a lot of people have shared, that how and Noah, the correlation between housing and open space and the balcony. I mean, it may be a real estate thing or whatever, but you want that ability to get up in the morning and walk out and get fresh air. And so thank you for that. Tell us a little bit about Saturday, the day of service. The trustees is overseeing that component. Tell us a little bit about that, what we can expect. And then Latifah, I want to talk with you about just the panel that you're moderating, what you hope to get out of it. And so Gabriella, tell us about Saturday.
Yeah, so Saturday we're doing Love Your Waterfront Day of Service, which we're really excited to host at City Natives, which is in Mattapan, and then we're hosting at the Nightingale Community Garden, which is in the Dorchester
Yep.
Center. So the City Natives one is at 9:30, and the Nightingale one is at 10 a.m. And we're looking forward. Come through, learn about the work that we're doing. Come to the gardens. Our gardens are beautiful. They're open spaces where we can continue to enjoy green space in the city. And then there are other activities taking place hosted by Boston Harbor Now and hosted by the Nispot River Watershed Association. But that'll be taking place on Saturday after the great conversation that's going to be taking place on Friday. So relaxing to be out in the green space and continue to work with our partners.
I'm excited. Saturday is the first part of Saturday is interesting, but I'm going to try to sneak to one of those. Latifah, you're moderating a panel on Friday morning. Tell us about the panel. What do you look to get out of it? And how, and maybe end with how important it is that we participate in these conversations.
Well, what I'm really excited about is that this panel is focused on resilience. And of course, that's something in our wheelhouse that we've been really focused on in East Boston, in neighborhood of affordable housing. We're working to build a resiliency network. So this is a day-to-day conversation that we're having. And to have that with for other persons that are invested within their community, I think it's going to be like a great synergy of what the possibilities are, not just in our own backyard, but across the city in many spaces. So I'm really excited about it because it's going to be an opportunity to kind of dig down deep and go wide as part of this process of resiliency. Because a lot of times when people say resiliency, I don't know if everybody's on the same page as to what that means. But for me, it's not just about rebuilding back to footprint. It's about using the catastrophic incident to wake up and bounce forward in kind of like a way in which you couldn't have done without a wake-up call. So I'm hoping that it builds a better system, and that by us collectively talking, we could talk about how many antiquated systems we need to work on in advance of catastrophe, so that we can help each other, because that's the only way we're going to move forward.
I believe that. And there, I don't know if when we talk about the catastrophe of what's going on with climate change or the catastrophe of a transportation system and how.
Well, it's all of those things. And that's what I'm saying. When you define resiliency, it's building back from a trauma circumstance for the community. It could be an economic trauma. It could be long-standing. It can be immediate. You know, it could break like what happened in Jackson, but has been like under the radar for a while. You know, it's systems that are not put in play to serve your interests, and knowing that inevitably everything breaks down or deteriorates. So if you're not on your game about pre-planning for those things, you're really part of the problem because you haven't set up to yourself to win.
I agree there. I definitely agree there. Anthony, one of the things I wanted to check in with you about, there's been this resounding theme in this conversation between the historical context of Black folks. Latifah mentioned the slave ships. Sheena mentioned swimming when we were at the ICA. Latifah mentioned it as well. Have you noticed a increase or more attentiveness to BIPOC, Black and brown folks coming to the waterfront and or participating in the events?
Yeah, absolutely. I can definitely say that since, I mean, personally, again, I started off with the coalition earlier this year. I've been in Boston for 3 years up until this point, and this is absolutely the most time I've spent along the waterfront. Okay. And I think not to make my experience a universal experience, but I think it's indicative of there's just this vast number of resources and programming that's available along the waterfront that I think just this year, the coalition hosting these programs and really being intentional about reaching into communities that have not been involved in this conversation, but have no adjacency to the waterfront. I think that's the other piece, is like, it's very easy to host programs along the waterfront and just target the waterfront community, just target those folks who live in the waterfront, live in the seaport. But for us, we've been very intentional about reaching out to groups, reaching out to partners like Boston While Black, like you, to make sure that we are exposing this conversation to and really these resources, these programs to a new demographic, to a new audience. And I can say that over this past year, we've seen an uptick in just Black and brown folks actually being on the waterfront and taking place in the programs, and actually feeling comfortable. I think that's the most important part, is that I've seen an increase in comfortability along the waterfront, and people, when they're thinking about their weekend plans, like that is actually an option for them now, versus feeling as though like, oh, we need to stay away from this place. And I'll just point to one specific example. Is during our Waterfront Wellness Week, we hosted a family day at the Children's Museum. And really, we had a speaking program. We had tabling from different partners outside of the museum. But really what our goal was to get Black and brown kids to the Children's Museum for free entry, to actually be exposed that this museum is actually free every Sunday to you all, or it's $1 entry every Sunday for children. But this resource has been available, it's been around, and people just hadn't known about it. And so we were told that Sunday that was the most Black and brown kids that the museum had seen coming in at one time in a while. And so just the intentionality piece is very important. And what we've seen is that when you are intentional about exposing people to these resources, they will take advantage of them.
Gabriella, let me mention you because Anthony mentioned the word comfortability. You talked about it as well. To be comfortable, when the resources can be there, we can have the ideal dream of the aesthetic of it. But if people that live there, or are abutters, may not agree with this movement that you guys are doing, can you talk a little bit from the trustees' perspective of why this investment and a little bit of like why now? Because the seaport has been there, and it was a hot topic when it was getting developed. Well, no, I can't ask you to talk to that because you're out in East Boston. But why this investment, and do you see the transformation of the comfortability as well?
Yeah. So I would say that the trustees Boston Waterfront Initiative, which is where most of my community outreach comes from, is seeking to build more waterfront parks in the city of Boston. And so in 2020, we were designated Pierce Park 3. And we're really excited about the project. I'm really excited about eventually expanding to other neighborhoods to bring more waterfront parks. But what I would say about EC is that we've taken the approach, like I said, of we host events, we ask the community to come. But that's not the only community outreach we do. We also meet the community where they are, whether it's at Maverick Station, it's at the park, it's at the Greenway, it's at an event being hosted by NOAA, at the Chelsea Creek. It's everywhere that the community is, going there and having a conversation. And I've actually found that having a one-on-one is so beneficial. One, you really get to know your neighbors. For me, I live in EC. I love getting to know my neighbors, making connections, seeing them at community events. And our conversations are more rich that way. And we're able to really talk about the waterfront, talk about a unique experience that families have, because my experience is not the same as my cousin.
That's right.
And it's not the same as my mom. So having those conversations, making sure that we're listening to them and including them in their work is number one. But in terms of having people come to the waterfront, you can make events, but if they're not events that the community wants to see, they're not going to come through. So that's why we host, we do the family festival where we have many, many, many activities. We have our community partners. We offer free sailing. We do live performances. We expand on small stuff we've seen the community enjoy, so that there is something that you might not want to sail, but you might want to listen to Veronica sing. So you're going to come to the park and listen. The same thing for our educational site tours. We host a waterfront on wheels, so you can come in a bike, scooter, skates, whatever you want, and you get to go around the Mary Ellen Welch Greenway, down to the beach, down to Pierce Park, and hear about the history of those sites and get to learn. And we've actually had like little kids say like, I'm going to come back next month. Even if my mom doesn't want to come, I want to come by myself. So it's those small things that really matter, because the programming is tailored to our community. We're enjoying the waterfront with what they want to see. And that's the most important thing for me and for the work that we're doing.
It comes down to it, not to make light of what you said, but it's community driven. It's driven by, I like what you said, that you build upon sort of the small successes or the likes within the community. You recognize, okay, a lot of folks came out. Let's kind of expand and build this. Lateef, I want to come to you and ask you to respond to this comment. Thaddeus Miles, who is part of the coalition, had the road to wellness and different events, and he also had curated some kayaking for an event. The Dad and Me literacy program. There's an opportunity to kayak up in Hyde Park. Is it Hyde Park on the Ponset, up by the Shell? And so Thaddeus said, I wasn't surprised, and maybe responding to what I asked Anthony, I wasn't surprised on the number of Black people that couldn't swim but still went kayaking and sailed on the boats. They want to be out there, thanks to all the groups that are doing this to make it happen. And so can you respond to that? Because you mentioned kayaking as well. I remember Thaddeus had it as an option. The Dad and Me literacy program had it as an option. Kayaking, somebody tried to get me to go, and I was like, I'm not getting in that skinny boat. I'll just be very transparent. So I'll put myself on the chopping block. But respond to that comment, Latifah.
Well, I think it's funny if you give people the tools, the avenue, the exposure, you break down the barriers by just even letting people see that water's right all around them. I actually trek over from Dorchester to East Boston every day. And so I'm going past that water in Hyde Park and looking at how underutilized it is. One of the things I would say that East Boston has going for it that other communities might not know about unless you were there is that East Boston is still kind of islandish, right? So everybody on East Boston goes to East Boston events as like an insular community. And as part of that, of course, there's negatives and there's positives about that, because you might not go to something downtown or something in Roxbury and experience that cultural diversity. But within the community of East Boston, which is disproportionately Hispanic, more than 50% of the people speak Spanish from outside, come from outside of this country, actually. So it's a huge immigrant base. Within that community, you'll have exposure to places like what was mentioned earlier, Pierce Park Sailing, which I'm a board member, or you'll have exposure to the harbor keepers, which clean up regularly. You'll have exposure to organizations that are on the ground weekly on that harbor, making it like something that is a norm. And it's very normative in East Boston to be connected to an event or a group that is doing some proactive space within the waterfront. And so I think that's the advantage of some of the communities that have built up that community base in that way. What's happening in Hyde Park is amazing. The water is beautiful. And I can tell you from my own personal experience, I grew up as a young girl and I was Muslim. And we didn't get exposed to water because we didn't wear bathing suits. And my mother was a fashion designer. So she just decides one day she's going to make me a bathing suit in college. And I wear it. It looks like a Batman suit. And people laugh at me. They're like, what?
You did not say.
And I was hurt, right? So it was like there was these barriers to getting access to water that aren't just because you can't walk across the street. There are things that are cultural barriers. And so in Roxbury, Dorchester, Hyde Park, because it's not normative, people kind of have to build past that, including being brave without having the skills of swimming, right? Because just the desire is that strong. So when I went away to school to Hampton University, I did 3 years of electrical, and then I changed my major to marine science. And I realized I don't know how to swim.
Wait. You went from electric to water. Now, what was there anything that happened in the transition? No, I'm
supercharged. Right?
I like that.
You set it up, right? So the point is, once I got that degree change, I was on the water every day from that point. I even jumped off a boat in the middle of the ocean without knowing how to swim well, because it was just so odd. I was so in awe of everything. So you give the people the exposure, even if they don't have all the skills, they'll get the skills to continue to be more comfortable. And you'll see a whole wave. I had to use that one too. A whole wave of people now accessing that water.
Anthony, Anthony, I might put you on the spot a little bit, but with swimming, like, have you heard, I know I see, and Gabriella said it's the one-on-one conversation. So at the events, yes, you're working and whatnot, but I've seen you in kind of sidebar and talking to people. what do you say to folks that may have expressed to you, hey man, I really, I want to, I don't know how to swim, I'm a little bit scared. What do you kind of say to them to take that first leap? Latifah said she just jumped into the water. I'm glad you said swim good, because when you said didn't swim, I'm like, wait, what? But
that too, by the way.
And now we can just jump in and sort of just have an open convo, Gabriella. So feel free to jump in. What have you heard from folks that they're afraid, and then how have you maybe handled that?
Yeah, and I am a part of that group. I will just say I will identify myself as someone who.
Yeah, I wasn't trying not to.
I can handle myself in water, but I'm definitely not a swimmer, I will say. And so I think one of the things that is very important is, to Latifah's point, is exposure, and then also being willing to take that risk. So one of the things that one of our partners, the YMCA, is really focused on, and you'll see this at this Friday at the summit, and we had this out at Waterfront Wellness Week, but is water safety classes for the youth, and really spending time and going into BPS, going into the YMCAs, and spending time with the young people to get them comfortable around the water first. And then I think that is the first step to really taking that leap into the water, is feeling as though, like, to your point, that just that comfortability of being near the water and that I won't drown once I'm inside, is just that first step. And I think one of the things that, for me, I mean, to your point, James, this actually comes up a lot. And we hear this from people of all ages, that this is something that they've either never learned, and so at this point they feel like as though it's past them, or they just haven't had the resources. And so I would just say, one is exposure, and then two is just being willing to take that leap, as Latifah said.
And the Boston Harbor Women of Color actually did an initiative this year on gaining young people access to water through the YMCA infrastructure. So these programs have been happening. They're just maybe not as widely known.
I can't swim.
So Gabriella, I was getting ready to come to you and kind of go to everybody. So because I'm going to tell mine, and shout out to Aaron, who said I can swim, but I can't float. Going from one end of the other and not stopping. Listen, and well, go ahead, Gabriella. I'll tell mine at the end.
No, I was just gonna say, I cannot swim. I'm not the only one out of my cousins that can't swim. That's just the reality. But I can save you from, like, if your kayak has capsized. Shout out again to Noah for teaching me when I was 14 how to kayak and how to save someone on a rescue kayak. So I'm definitely not scared to be out in the water, kayaking, sailing, but I can't swim. So it's a very interesting conversation. I was going to add, one of my favorite memories this summer was with our waterfront ambassadors, which is a group of young people that we hire to do community outreach for the One Waterfront. And we took them kayaking to Noah's kayaking program at Constitution Beach. And a lot of them had not been like kayaking, sailing, or didn't know how to actually swim. And so they were very nervous, but we had a conversation. They went and they loved it. And then they hosted a youth walking tour where they did sailing with the sailing center. So in the span of 7 weeks, they loved the water. They were not scared to just be able to kayak with their friends. And that's my favorite memory, of just them being exposed to the water when a lot of them live literally in front of the beach.
I wish. Listen, Latifah, tell your swimming or water. Well, we know based on what you said that you can swim. You said then that you couldn't swim well.
Yeah, I gotta tell you, because you talked about jumping into the water, and I want to acknowledge, I saw Nancy Smith from the city also just post something about water. And it's so true. I swim at the Mason Pool, and shout out to the city, because before I used to have a membership with my family. Cost me a few dollars, and now, or as of recently, I was able to go for free. So having free access makes a big difference with access, right? We can talk all day, but when you have it for free, it takes away all the barriers. So yes, my first swimming class, what I did not realize, because I was an overzealous student, is the teacher said, can I get an example of somebody showing themselves drowning by jumping in the deep water? And then we're going to go through a saving routine. And I was always the A++ kind of student. So I jumped in.
To drown?
Well, I thought they were going to
drown,
save
but
me.
the
teacher was livid. He was like, "You're supposed to jump in if you know how to swim." I said, but wait a minute, they didn't say that. They didn't say that. And my thing is, how would a beginner's class know how to swim? I just thought, I just thought it was no brainer. But yes, I'm definitely bold enough to jump into the water, but I think you should have all your basic skills and take the time. And it's important to gain those access points, because I'm certainly not advising people to go out on the water without having both the right equipment and also knowing how to swim.
Absolutely. We're going to get ready to wrap up in a few minutes. I'm going to throw this in before I tell my couple of my swimming stories. This is so interesting. At my son's high school, you had to take and pass a swimming class. And so I think from a policy standpoint, and especially a lot of people don't know that Madison has, I don't want to say Olympic size, but Madison has like 2 or 3 pools within that. I believe it's still there. They have a pool. So there's the ability. James Morton, if you remember Anthony, he talked about what the Y was doing with the city, with the free classes and whatnot. And so I think a policy thing that based on Thaddeus's comment is if we could work to figure out how to work with either BPS or the surrounding school systems that have swimming, that we offer that maybe as a option for physical activity. I know you used to have to, now I'm a little bit older, used to have to pass gym class and get points in gym or physical activity. I remember a couple of years ago hearing that some schools weren't having gym or whatever. So maybe that's an alternative where they have the availability to teach kids in school. We teach them all the other skills, maybe teach them how to swim as well. One of the things I wanted to, so I have to, and Nancy, Leslie and them are on it. There's also the Perkins. Aaron said, I think Umana better had it. Well, that may not be the right vernacular, but out there in East Boston by the water, Umana, I haven't heard the word Umana in a long. Aaron, you tell me your age. The Umana School in East Boston has a half-size Olympic pool and is running free swim classes for youth through East Boston YMCA. So if you're out in Eastie, there's an opportunity right there. So I'll share 2 things with you. One is I can swim. I can float. But when I get ready, I have to be able to stand up. I a little bit of, physicality. I need to be in better physical shape. But I'm like Aaron, like if I ever got in a situation, I would turn so speedy and I would get across. But I do know how to swim, but I can't go in any deeper. That if I just get ready to, my feet have to hit the floor or the sea floor or ground or whatever you want to call it. So that's my piece about swimming. I can swim, but I don't go anything over 6 feet. I don't do it. We're going to get ready to wrap up. I think I want Gabriella to close us out with the last statement. So Latifah, is there anything that you didn't get a chance to share either about the summit or just in general I just really got to pause and say the intentionality around how the trustees and the coalition and whatnot is moving to really, really be inclusive and hiring folks like yourself that are really invested in community. Maybe Anthony, in the last minute, we can talk to the point of participation, because when opportunities are presented, and Latifah, I see you nod your head as well, when the barriers are eliminated, I believe we do have a responsibility to, as much as where we can with the other barriers in life, to try to take advantage of those areas. And so Latifah, closing remarks.
Yeah, so I wanted to say one of the exciting things that we are doing as part of NOAA and participating with the Waterfront Coalition is that this is not like a one-off event. All of these organizations do kind of organic things. And so a week after this event, we're also having a summit in East Boston for East Boston resiliency. So we welcome folks to come out for that. That's going to be at Spinelli's from 4 to 8. And you can check out our website at noaacdc.org to get more information about that. as
Latifah,
well.
hold on. Now you say Spinelli's, and some of my older folks here from Roxbury, you know what I'm talking about. The old sub shop that used to be in Nubian. So I'm like, wait, Spinelli. Okay, go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, it's not the sub shop. It's one of the best Italian
I know.
eateries known across this region. So we're doing that to break bread. We're calling it Pop the Question Hackathon for Experts and Dummies, speed dating event with climate. So yeah,
please give me that information because
we will send that out to you as a result of this. But I just wanted to say that this event loops so many other resonating events that are going to come out in concentric circles. So if you come this Friday and invest in meeting some of the folks there, you'll be surprised at how many other opportunities come out of that as well.
And the truth is, winter is coming. And so all this waterfront conversation is wonderful. I love it. But there's, to some extent, in Boston, we talk from March to October 15th. No, I'm messing. Anthony, your closing remarks, sir.
Yeah, no, just thank you again for having us, James. And just really excited for this weekend. This Friday and Saturday, the summit is going to be, a great, I would say, cap to the coalition's programming this year. We will be doing some more stuff to close out the year, but this will be the last big program that the coalition's hosting. And just want to touch on your what you said about intentionality. Yes. I would just say that the coalition has been throughout this year just very intentional about the partnerships that we've been making, both in terms of organizations and strategic partnerships like the one with you, James, and then bringing in speakers who are representative of our entire city. Our city is growing more and more diverse. It's the leadership is a bit younger, moving and trending that way. And so we like to make sure that we are, when we think about our speakers and our panel, and I'm just going to share a little bit of insight on behind the scenes. A lot of intentionality went into choosing the panelists for the summit. Months of actually doing outreach and being turned down and making sure we did the right next outreach to the right next person. It was very intentional, the program that we put together. So I really hope people are able to come out. There will be a live stream option as well. So if you sign up on the Eventbrite link, you'll have the information to come in person or the live stream. So if you can tune in at work on Friday, I encourage you to do that as well. There will be great conversations.
Gabriella, excuse me, it's presumption, but you're probably our youngest person in this conversation. I'm probably the oldest. Please close us out. To Anthony's point, the piece about young people, I think is very important. We're here. Some of us are going to be here a little less longer than some others. But it's you and those coming after you. You mentioned your cousins a lot. I presume some of them are younger. And so I thought it was very important that you be the last comment and just send us, you can talk about Friday, you can talk about the ongoing work. Latifah, I love what you said and Anthony's talked about this often, and I've seen it demonstrated since I've been involved. This isn't a one and done. Like there's a movement. There's a wave coming. Go ahead, Gabrielle. I'm going to shut up. I felt that.
First of all, thank you for having me here, for letting me join the conversation. I also want to say thank you to the audience members for your comments. We can be having this conversation, but without your comments, the conversation cannot move forward. So thank you for sharing your experiences, your stories. Love it. I will go back and read them too, because I always think it's interesting to hear about it. I think, let's continue having these conversations. Let's continue to have these conversations with our young people in our community. Let's have multi-generational community conversations. Let's have our conversations also in languages that you speak at home, whether it's Spanish, French, blah, 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 anything. Let's have them in those so that we all feel comfortable. If you ever want to have a conversation in Spanish, hit me up. Let's talk. But I would say that, let's have those conversations. Let's meet our community where they are. Let's work with the schools to talk to students about opportunities that there are on the waterfront, whether it's a summer job program, it's an after-school program, it's free events that are happening. Let's continue that. Let's continue to work collaboratively to share that. I think that's the biggest thing I want to share. Like, NOAA, the trustees can do all the work by themselves, but if we work collaboratively, we're speaking with so many more people, and that's what we're looking to do. And I will share that we are doing a harvest festival on the waterfront at Pierce Park, October 8th. I'll put the link in the Facebook. Come through whether you're from EC or not. We're going to have different activities. The views from Pierce Park are so beautiful. And we really want to get to know everyone that's excited to be at the waterfront and hear your stories. We're looking forward to it. Thank you again for having me and for letting me be part of this conversation.
Absolutely. And just to close out on one piece of intentionality, the coalition has been very intentional about multi-language as well. I remember some of the flyers and things being in different languages. So that there as well. I appreciate all of you.
And I want to say the RCC connection, I'm alum there. So shout out to those alums. We want to see you in the house as well.
Shout out to President.
All of Roxbury.
Yes. Interim President Jackie Jenkins Scott, and also the board President Steve Tompkins. Thank all of you all so much. To go back and look at the comments, because there are a few things where folks are either asking questions or making some suggestions. Anthony, Pastor Marion is determined to get us connected and maybe figure out how to get some faith-based programs involved in this as well, because you can go out in the water and scream Jesus if you want to, but if you don't know how, and you ain't walking on the water. So, all right, with that being said, I'm going to let you guys go. I'm going to pay a few bills, but thank all three of you so much. Folks, don't forget, Friday at 8:30 begins at RCC. Anthony has put the Eventbrite link in the comments, so go in there and click that. Thank all of you, and I'll see you all on Friday morning.
Thank you.
Absolutely. It was an honor. Thank you. Folks, that was an amazing session with the folks from the coalition, as well as from NOAA and also the trustees out in East Boston. Honored to have them in the room. And it is imperative that you all remember when the little white things went up in the street and everybody was having a fit about the traffic blockers, I guess that we'll call them. There were community conversations around that. And I believe they're making sure we know about this. In that particular case, I don't know how much outreach was done, but it's interesting to try to respond and complain after the fact. And so when these opportunities are made available to lend your voice, like tonight, I'm hosting Cocktails and Coastlines. So I knew it was an event. I just learned the title yesterday. I said, oh, wait, what? Cocktails and Coastlines. Okay. So I'm facilitating sort of an interactive at the Harbor Tent at the New England Aquarium tonight. But come out if you get a chance, with understanding access, and it's going downtown, and things are funny with the tea and whatnot. But if you are able, come down this evening and check me out at the New England Aquarium. That's one event that's going on. And then there's also Friday for the summit as well at RCC beginning at 8:30. So I'll touch a little bit on the importance of participation. When these barriers are removed, wherewith you can, try to participate and lend your voice. And not just lending your voice, but all the free events and the things that they're doing, and free food, and sometimes probably childcare and giveaways and things like that. So plan on coming. Also, speaking of coming, do me a favor and plan on joining me tomorrow evening at 6 p.m. at the Dudley Cafe. The registration information is there. It is case sensitive. We are acknowledging Hispanic Heritage Month that begins tomorrow, and we have some guests that do sort of the similar work in the Latino community, similar to Java with Jimmy. They are the medical staff that work with El Mundo, and I forgot the other platform, where they also have like a conversation around like health, like we do with Your Healthy Java. And so they're coming with Dr. Alabre tomorrow at 6 p.m. at the Dudley Cafe. We are doing a in-person recording, so please come and be a part of the audience. I would be honored to have you there and see you there. And then also, as we mentioned, don't forget Friday, the summit is taking place at 8:30. Begins at 8:30, I believe. This is terrible. My session starts, I think, at hold on. I'm about to go look at it right now. Friday review. All right, so there's a link. Wait a minute, where'd it go? Hold on, y'all. Oh, Friday. All right, I'll find it later. But I think it's at 11:30. It is. It's 11. Oh, shoot. I'll post it on the Facebook page. Oh, click the link. If you go to the Eventbrite link that Anthony put in, it'll tell you all the details. So hopefully you'll see me on Friday. Come out if you can. I know it's during the day, but as Anthony mentioned, it'll be live streamed. There's the day of service on Saturday for those that can't make it on Friday. Nightingale Street is right down the street from here. They're working with that garden. So I think that's it for me today. Let me just check the comments. Wasn't able to say good morning to everyone. 11:15. I love Aaron and Anthony. Thank you all. It begins at 11. My session begins at 11:15, but the event begins at 8:30 with that warm-up exercise. And then there's sort of a luncheon, towards the end and social hour. So Anthony, I appreciate you, brother. I'm getting it together. Pastor Marion, if you have an inner city, Pastor Marion is not playing. Inner city church leaders, pass it on to Anthony. Pastor Marion, I did about 10, 12 years ago, but I don't even, you're going to get me into a whole nother subject. Never mind. I'll just say that there were a lot more. I was aware of a lot more of the youth ministers in the city some years ago. One, I'm older. Two, I'm not in it, but I don't hear it as much as I used to. Youth ministries, youth leaders, and stuff like that. There's one that comes to mind, my sister, Pastor Latrell Chase, and some others as well. Pastor Robeson Pierre. So I'll put some things together, Pastor Marion, and get them over to Anthony. No garden this year, Auntie Java. I didn't do it. If I did, there'd be all type of pictures and I'd be dropping off tomatoes and cucumbers and stuff, but I didn't do it this year. Leslie, Sister Leslie, it's good seeing you everywhere as well. All right, folks, we will see you tomorrow at 9 a.m. I believe I'm going live tonight at the aquarium. So the best way you can stay up to date and tune in every time I'm live is select the notification to be notified when Java with Jimmy goes live. And so it'll always pop up. All right. Emmanuel Gospel Center is a good one too, Pastor. All right. Thank you. Folks, thank you so much for being with me today. And we will see you either this evening at 5 p.m. or tomorrow at 9 a.m. as we close out the week with Thankful Thursdays. Have a great day, everybody. It's We Need to Know Wednesday. So Google something you don't know and learn a new thing today. It's not always about the politics. Health is always important. We need to know about that. But thank you for joining us for Waterfront Wednesdays here in the Java Cafe. And that's it for me. Have a great day.